Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. You good? This would be a great time if any of you have got your cell phones or any other type of electronic device to please silence them, turn them off, and if you have a watch that beeps, please turn that off also. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Welcome to the 85th National Finals of the American Legion's High School Oratorical Scholarship Program, a Constitutional Speech Contest. We would also like to welcome you who are joining us via the network and on Legion TV and on Facebook. We're excited that you're here with us today. My name is Dave King, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. At this time, would everyone please rise and remain standing through the completion of the Pledge of Allegiance. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem. Two. Would you please uncover and join me in prayer? Father in heaven, thank you so much for these young students who are here today, who are competing in this contest. Father, we thank you for the parents and the coaches and the teachers who have brought these children to us, who have prepared them for this. Father, we would ask you to bless them. Father, we'd ask you to help them relax, help them learn about the Constitution. And Father, thank you for all the leadership that they will be giving us. Father, thank you so much for this beautiful campus, for all these volunteers that help. Father, take care of us and bless us all. Amen. Amen. Please join Sally Rossman from the American Legion Auxiliary Americanism Chairman in the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you will join me, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. This morning, 3 contestants, each having won their respective department contests, the national semifinal rounds, their quarterfinals, will compete for $67,500 in college scholarships. In the over 80-year history of this activity, the American Legion has awarded over $3 million to respective students. You will notice that the contestants are not in the room at this time. Throughout the competition portion, they will appear on stage only to give their oration. I have some instructions for you, the audience. You will play a key role in maintaining fairness to all of the students. First, please do not applaud until the contest is completely finished. I would also ask you to refrain from taking any pictures or videos. We do have a staff photographer who will be taking pictures of each contestant during the first few minutes of their prepared oration. Please remain in your seat while a contestant is speaking. If you must leave the room, please do it between speakers, and please return before the next speaker is about to begin or you will not be permitted to re-enter until the speaker has finished with her speech. In addition, please make sure that all cell phones, electronic devices are turned off or silenced. If you happen to be seated next to a judge, please do not disturb or call attention to that judge. Our speakers will be introduced by number only. Prompting in any manner is not permitted. Doing so may result in the disqualification of a speaker. Each speaker is about to deliver an 8 to 10 minute prepared oration on some phase of the Constitution of the United States of America. The contestants are not allowed to use notes, a podium, or a sound system. You may notice that the contestants are wearing a wireless microphone. This is to record their speech for the video and online broadcast and will not in any way amplify their voices here in the auditorium. The contestants will be shown a time card at the 8, 9, and 10-minute mark of their oration. If there is a penalty of a time requirement, a penalty of 1 point for each minute or fraction thereof will be assessed against the competitor's total score. There will be a short pause between contestants to allow the judges to mark their scorecards. And before introducing the last speaker on their 8 to 10-minute prepared oration, I will ask a member of the audience to draw an assigned topic of the 4 that have been provided. All contestants will then speak for 3 to 5 minutes on the same subject. When the last contestant has spoken for 7 minutes on the prepared oration, contestant number 1 will be taken to a private room and given the assigned topic card. They will have 5 minutes to study that assigned topic. If everyone is ready, I will call for contestant number 1, and the title of her oration is "Why Freedom of Speech is in Danger."
My body is my choice. Free Palestine. Defund the police. Socialism is the new communism. A man cannot become a woman. Immigrants are not welcome here. How many of those statements did you agree with? How many did you disagree with? Well, did you know that all of those statements can be considered hate speech, depending on who you ask? Throughout American history, all kinds of voices, opinions, and thoughts have been expressed no matter the sentiment. Because whether or not you approve or hate what I'm about to say, you must support my right to say it. Such is the freedom of speech, protection for the speech that you approve and that you despise. And yet in recent years, we've seen a pushback on this fundamental right. So today, through 3 points, I'm going to be talking to you about hate speech, America's push for tolerance, and why our fundamental constitutional right is now in danger. Let's start off with point 1, why America is eliminating hate speech. The fact of the matter is that America has become a hyper-emotional country. According to the novel Untangling Emotions by Aleister J. Groves, he writes, quote, "The loudest voice in the room, at least in Western culture, tells us that our emotions are everything, the most important thing, the thing that defines us. This means that the greatest damage you can do to someone is not affirm what that individual feels," end quote. In Western culture, we've placed our feelings and emotions on a pedestal. And because of that, whatever negatively impacts those emotions is of the utmost importance to eliminate. In other words, as we continue to have a tendency to hide and prioritize those emotions, we will also have a tendency to censor speech that causes perturbance, disturbance, and aggression. The oncoming rise of cancel culture has raised many questions in society about what kind of speech should be allowed. According to the Knight Foundation, 91% of Americans believe that protecting free speech is an important part of our American democracy. And yet, over 40% of the same poll said that they would be completely accepting of the government placing a ban on hate speech. The Foundation for Individual Rights did a survey of 500 college campuses across the nation to discover that 90% of them had bans on speech that was considered offensive and intolerant, including speech that spoke out against LGBTQ rights, abortion rights, and affirmative action movements. America's push for tolerance will also push an agenda to destroy speech that fights that same tolerance. A misguided article published recently by the Washington Post urged citizens to pressure the government to pass legislation to ban hate speech. Their reason for this? Because they believe that hate speech creates an intolerant society. America now statistically wants to ban hate speech, but we don't realize the implications of such a move. According to the Pew Research Center, over 60% of Americans think that you can ban hate speech and still protect free speech. This is profoundly incorrect, and so we must speak out to ensure that our primary constitutional right is protected. This brings me to my second point. Point 2, how the Constitution protects hate speech. In order to understand how or why the Constitution protects hate speech, we must first look at the mindset behind it. Free speech originates as a philosophy from the concept of self-ownership, meaning that every man has an inalienable right to himself. Philosopher John Locke stated that every man has a right to his labors, his body, and therefore his words. The Founding Fathers were inspired by this radical notion, and that's what prompted them to write the First Amendment. James Madison, chief author of the Bill of Rights, once said that the First Amendment was the most important of them all. After all, if citizens could not speak out to criticize or condemn the government, not only was freedom of speech in danger, but every single other freedom as well. The First Amendment states, quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the exercise thereof, and make no law abridging freedom of speech or of the press," end quote. Throughout American history, the United States Supreme Court has made it very clear that freedom of speech has been and will continue to be protected. One case in particular in the 1960s illustrated to the world the high bar that America has for ruling speech is unconstitutional. In 1969, a man by the name of Clarence Brandenburg, who was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, was recorded stating derogatory and degrading slurs about African Americans. Brandenburg was charged by the Supreme Court of Ohio for inflammatory and dangerous speech. Brandenburg then appealed his ruling to the Supreme Court, where they decided that Brandenburg's speech was constitutional, since he had not committed any damage to physical property or violence. This ruling set a precedent. Justice Douglas, who was on the case at the time, explained the court's ruling saying this, quote, "The unlawfulness of speech should be measured by action taken to further the belief, not the nature of the belief itself," end quote. This precedent meant that no matter how evil, cruel, unkind, or mean that speech is, the speaker still has the right to express their ideas. I'm not saying that hate speech can't be cruel and it can't be unkind, but I am saying that it is constitutional. The Foundation for Economic Education once said it like this, quote, "While some people are justifiably offended by racial or sexual insults, there is not and cannot be a right to not be offended," end quote. The Constitution protects all people's right to express their ideas, even if you disagree with what their ideas are. This brings me to my third and final point. Point 3, why it matters. America now wants to ban hate speech, but we don't realize the implications of such a move. A ban on hate speech eventually leads to a ban on all speech, because once you take away a government's check on free speech, you never fully get it back. And this means we must support everyone's right to speak, even if we disagree with what they say. In 1984, Gregory Lee Johnson doused the American flag in kerosene, and he lit it on fire. The colors of red, white, and blue went up in flames as he stood in Dallas City Hall burning our national symbol. Johnson's case for free speech reached the Supreme Court, where they decided that his speech was constitutional, since the First Amendment protects all symbolic speech, no matter how hateful. I'm in no way saying that burning the flag is right or correct, but I am saying that it is protected by the First Amendment. This means that we must protect people's right to speak, even those who burn the flag. Those who burn the flag, in another sense, endorse it by illustrating the expansive liberties that America will protect at all costs, even at the cost of our own flag. Countries all over the world ring out the warnings of banning hate speech. Just this past year in the United Kingdom, the New Hampshire government passed a law banning all speech that caused the recipient distress and anxiety. There has been 7,000 charges and over 100 arrests in just this past year alone. One man who had made a comment against the trans rights flag had police officers show up to his house and throw him in jail. His crime? That his social media post had caused anxiety in his community. That is the same exact future that America faces if we also choose to ban hate speech. Our neighbors, our communities, our friends, our family, they think that banning hate speech is going to create a more loving and tolerant America. But instead, all it does is create a country where what is allowed to be said is only controlled by mob rule about what culture currently thinks is politically correct. Many years ago, my family and I lived on the same street as a very nice Jewish family. My eldest sister and I were best friends with their eldest daughter, and I spent many afternoons in their house. In recent months, wars broken out between Israel and Palestine, and many universities across the nation, including MIT, Penn State, Harvard, and many others have shown rapid support for Palestine, including holding anti-Semitic protests that call Jewish people murderers and oppressors. My mother, while recently on the phone with their mom, expressed her concerns at these protests, and how she responded shocked me. She said no matter what they said about Jewish people, the state of Israel, or even her family, she would support their right to freedom of speech, because she knows that she protects their right to freedom of speech, so in turn will her right to freedom of speech be protected in the future. She aligns her beliefs with renowned political activist Noam Chomsky, who once said this, quote, "If we do not believe in freedom of speech for those we despise, then we do not believe in it at all." So I encourage you, the next time you hear someone say something you dislike, read a post that you disagree with, or see an article that makes you grind your teeth, to remember to appreciate the First Amendment and the Constitution for what it is, that it protects all people's right to speak, no matter what you speak about. Thank you.
The time for contestant number 1, 9 minutes, 48 seconds. That falls within the parameters. There are no penalty points. If everyone is ready, I will call for contestant number 2. The title of his oration is Out of Many, One.
Freedom. It's one of the words most commonly associated with the United States of America. It's plastered all over billboards and t-shirts. It's in the lyrics to songs and poems. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, "It's a free country," regarding the United States. But while this idea of freedom is certainly an important part of our nation and its identity, the most integral part of this country, as well as what makes it so special, is right there in the United States of America. Unity. The number of times a word is mentioned in the Constitution isn't necessarily an indicator of how important it was to the Founding Fathers, but I do think that it can be interesting and maybe even telling. Altogether, the words freedom and free can be found in the Constitution 6 times. The words union and united appear 90 times. On every coin, on every dollar bill any of us have ever held, e pluribus unum has been inscribed. Out of many, one. Union. But not only is our constitutional union important to the identity of this nation, it is necessary in order to uphold the structures of freedom and liberty that our culture today holds so dear. First, it's important to understand what makes the unity that was set up in our Constitution so special. After all, any stable country could really be considered united, couldn't it? We're not even the only country that calls ourselves united. There's the United Kingdom, United Arab Emirates, the former Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, but take a moment to think about those countries. The USSR used to be a union of multiple nations, including Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. Today, Russia has been at war with Ukraine for over 2 years. Some kind of union. The UK has a much better track record, but still far from perfect. Ireland fought for decades to gain independence from the Union, and then for decades after, there was tension and conflict in Northern Ireland. Scotland gets closer and closer to voting for independence every time they have a referendum. Just a few years ago, the vast majority of the Prime Minister's cabinet resigned within a week, not long before the Prime Minister himself resigned. As I watched this unfold over the news, I wondered if this kind of implosion was as uncommon over there as it would be if it had happened over here in the United States. Turns out, while the US has had one president resign throughout our entire history, the UK has had 12 prime ministers resign just since the start of the 20th century, and they've gone through 5 in the past 7 years. With all of the conflict our country may have, the Oval Office does not quite have the revolving door that Downing Street seems to have. But not only is unity our greatest strength, it's also been our greatest priority from the start. The very first reason listed in the preamble of the Constitution for the document's existence is in order to form a more perfect union. The reason we ditched the Articles of Confederation for the Constitution in the first place is because the old government didn't provide us with a strong enough union. The entirety of the original Articles of the Constitution have the primary purpose of preserving union and preventing corruption. Article 1, Section 10 specifically prevents individual states from going against the will of the Union. And Article 2, Section 3 establishes that the President will give a yearly State of the Union address, which is just about the most important speech the President gives on a yearly basis. Even in the wake of one of this country's darkest hours, the Civil War, our focus was still on preserving unity, even if it meant compromise. Despite Section 2 of the 14th Amendment establishing that any government officials who had aided in rebellion can no longer run for office, the vast majority of high-ranking Confederates were granted amnesty within just a few years of the conflict in an attempt to mend relations between the North and the South. For example, William R. Cox was a brigadier general in the Confederate military before he served 3 terms in the United States House of Representatives. Additionally, while Ulysses S. Grant's presidency may at first seem like an act of subjugation of the South due to his history as a Northern general, Grant was wholly devoted to preserving constitutional unity throughout his presidency. In fact, on the date of his death, July 23, 1885, the New York Times conducted an interview with James Longstreet, who had been a leading Confederate general in the Civil War. In the interview, Longstreet said that Grant was the truest as well as the bravest man who ever lived. He then went on to tell a story about their friendship, one which shows just how important union was to Grant. The two had gone to military school together and were frequently stationed together early in their careers as lieutenants. During this time, they often played a game of brag. Now, I'm not sure exactly how the mechanics of this game work, but it seemed to involve small wagers, and Longstreet said that Grant was just horrible at it, usually losing a decent sum of money whenever he played. Decades later, Longstreet was fighting under a different flag and was a right-hand man to General Lee. Because of this, he was one of the generals present for the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. Immediately after the surrender, Grant approached Longstreet, and as they shook hands, Grant handed him a coin, a starting wager for a game of brag. And he said, "Let us have another game of brag, in order to recall the old times which were so pleasant to us all." In the interview, Longstreet said, "Why do men fight who were born to be brothers?" When Grant was victorious, he didn't gloat. He was simply happy to have restored unity, both in his nation and in a friendship. But why should unity be such a high priority for us? Of course, a nation falling apart is never a good thing, but why do we put so much focus on something that isn't always at the top of the priority list for a lot of other nations? The Founding Fathers certainly supported this idea even outside of their writings in the Constitution. In his farewell address, George Washington said, "Your union ought to be considered as a main prop of your liberty, and your love of one ought to endear you to the preservation of the other." I believe that this is because America is a country created in rebellion, created in revolution. If we had never had any unity, this country wouldn't exist. If those 56 men hadn't been united enough to sign the bottom of the Declaration of Independence, our freedom, our independence, our liberty wouldn't be possible. Even after we won the war, if those same Founding Fathers hadn't been united enough to work through their differences and compromise in order to create the new government and the Constitution, our government today wouldn't be what it is that provides us with all of the freedoms that we have. Even decades later, if Abraham Lincoln hadn't been so devoted to restoring the Union, if he hadn't had the knowledge that a house divided against itself cannot stand, this country would be broken, just a fraction of what it is today. Without unity, freedom for slaves in the South may not have come for another century. Today, it can feel like unity is an impossibility. Everything seems to cause an uproar. Just 3 years ago, there were riots at the Capitol building. In 2024, an election year, I can guarantee you right now that this country is about to get even more divided than usual. For now, we have our union. We have, in the words of Benjamin Franklin, a republic if you can keep it. But sometimes it only feels like we have any sort of unity during a national emergency, like the Revolution, or World War II, or 9/11. Sometimes with everything else that's going on in the world, it may feel like we only really need our unity during a national emergency. It's not that important otherwise. But union isn't only necessary during a national emergency. A lack of unity is a national emergency. Without our union, how could we work together to create change? And without change, how can freedom be preserved? We've been able to maintain our union through the very worst, through wars, through terrorism, through corruption, and we have the tools to maintain it now. But we seem to have lost focus. The union no longer seems to be the highest priority for the people of this nation. The problem with that is that freedom isn't easy. It relies on democracy and it relies on unity. Those aren't easy either, and let's face it, no one expects them to be. Democracy is hard. Union is hard. But if the unity that's right there at the top of the Constitution can stay at the top of our priorities, we have what it takes to remain the United States of America.
The time for contestant number 2 is 9 minutes and 59 seconds. This falls within the parameters. There are no penalties. Before I introduce contestant number 3, we will draw and assign topic. National Commander Seehaffer, would you please draw one of these topics? I will announce the topic for the assigned topic once contestant number 3 has completed their prepared oration. If everyone is ready, I will call for contestant number 3. The title of his oration is Running for Freedom.
Earl Granville was 2 weeks into basic training with his twin brother Joe when 9/11 happened. He went on to serve 9 years in the Army National Guard as an infantryman with deployments to Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. On his final tour, he lost his left leg to a roadside bomb while on patrol. The explosion took the life of 2 of his friends, Specialist Derek Harland and Major Scott Haggerty. But for Granville, the months he spent rehabilitating would be nothing compared to the struggles he faced when his twin brother, Staff Sergeant Joe Granville, died by suicide. He went on to share, quote, "When I lost my leg, I felt so lucky to be alive. But when I lost my brother, I was a wreck. It nearly destroyed me," end quote. I've come to speak of the U.S. Constitution, but we must remind ourselves of what brings this document life, and that is the people's will to seek its fruition. We must remember that even the Soviet Union had a constitution. In fact, it included many rights very reminiscent of our own framework. Ultimately, however, these promises were empty because there was no will to enforce them. In the preamble, our Constitution promises to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. However, I ask you, how can any of these be true without sacrifice? Our founding fathers sacrificed for the right to put ink on that very paper itself, and their posterity sacrificed in and outside of this country for the next 200 plus years to ensure its sanctity. Without sacrifice, these words that illuminate our history are unfortunately just words. How could we ensure justice, domestic tranquility, common defense, or liberty without the dedication of our men and women who risk their lives every day for America? I ask you, how do we expect to protect the words of the Constitution without first protecting those brave souls who turn them into truth? The words "we the people" represents our freedom, but it also represents the hardships in achieving it, as shown by the story of Sergeant Granville. The preamble, a beacon of hope and aspiration, outlines a vision for a society built on justice, peace, and liberty. Yet we're reminded that these promises are hollow without the sacrifices of our men and women in uniform. Imagine the year 1787, a pivotal moment when visionaries gathered in Philadelphia, crafting a document that would shape the destiny of a fledgling nation. This Constitution, an emblem of freedom, embodies the spirit of resilience that defines us as Americans. Fast forward to the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln, in his immortal Gettysburg Address, spoke of a nation, quote, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. The duty of the citizens at the time was clear: to preserve the Union, to defend the principles enshrined in the Constitution, and to ensure that a government of the people would not perish. As we traverse through history, the words of the Constitution echo in moments of trial and triumph. The suffragettes, battling for the right to vote, invoked the Constitution's promise to equal protection under the law. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, painted a vivid picture of the Constitution as a promissory note, demanding that the guarantees of freedom and equality be extended to all citizens, regardless of race. Now, in the 21st century, our duty as citizens is no less significant. Consider the challenges we face: a global pandemic testing the resilience of our healthcare system, the divisive forces of misinformation threatening our unity, and the urgent call to address climate change echoing through corridors of power. The Constitution beckons us to be architects of solution, to stand united in the face of adversity, and to safeguard the blessings of liberty for ourselves and generations yet unborn. In the present, the Constitution remains our guiding compass. The duty to participate in the democratic process is not an abstract concept, but a call to action. We witness citizens marching in the streets not as mere spectators, but as active participants demanding justice, equality, and a more perfect union. The Constitution's call to establish justice is heard throughout courtrooms where battles for civil rights are fought. It resonates in the hearts of citizens who tirelessly advocate for policies that bridge gaps of inequality. In the present, as in the past, our duty as citizens is to ensure that the promises of that Constitution are not mere words on parchment, but lived realities for all. The call to ensure domestic tranquility takes on a new significance as we confront the complexities of an interconnected world. In an era of rapid information, citizens are tasked with discerning truth from falsehood, understanding that domestic tranquility is not a passive state, but a collective effort to foster understanding, empathy, and unity. As we provide for the common defense, we grapple with challenges that transcend borders. The preamble reminds us that our duty as citizens extends beyond our own shores. The Constitution implores us to be stewards of the planet, acting not only in our own interests, but the shared interests of humanity. The call to promote the general welfare is amplified in our current context. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in our social fabric, highlighting the imperative to address healthcare disparities, economic inequalities, and systemic injustices. Our duty is to advocate for policies that uplift the entire nation, leaving no one behind. As we delve deeper in our obligations, let us not forget those brave souls who have answered the call of duty in defense of our freedoms. Our veterans, who have borne the weight of protecting the Constitution on the front lines, often face a silent battle, a battle for mental health. The wounds of war, both visible and invisible, linger long after service is ended. According to the Council on Criminal Justice, quote, veterans are 57.3% more likely to die by suicide than non-veterans, with estimates ranging from 17 to 24 veterans dying by suicide in the U.S. each day. The duty to our veterans goes beyond mere appreciation. It demands a commitment to their well-being. We must advocate for policies that uplift all of our veterans, ensuring that none of them face their battle for inner peace alone. Because we, the people, mean something far outside of the Constitution or federal government itself. It means civil unity in the name of those principles outlined in the first words of our nation's founding. While the Constitution acts as a guideline for the operation of our government, the preamble stands out as a guideline for the people, for us. The relationship between the preamble and the rest of our founding document represents what sets America apart from every other country. And that is the symbiotic relationship between the service of the government to the people and the service of the people to each other. Today, Sergeant Earl Granville runs with a team of fellow veterans as a part of the Achilles Freedom Team, a program for wounded, ill, and injured members of the U.S. military with the end goal of entering and completing a marathon. Sergeant Granville and his teammates often take turns carrying a cinder block on their back. They named this block Cindy. And what she represents, Granville said, is, quote, the heavy mental adversity we all face as human beings. Guilt, stress, depression, anxiety, all those bad feelings that hold you down and keep you from enjoying life. When one teammate gets tired of carrying Cindy, they hand her to another. Quote, it's a reminder that no one has to carry their burden alone. We all carry it together. In these tumultuous times, the Constitution's directive to secure the blessings of liberty is a clarion call. In a time where, according to the National Civic League, quote, only 51% of Americans can name all three branches of government. Our duty as citizens is not a passive acceptance of liberty, but an active pursuit of it. We must defend against encroachments in our freedoms, champion the principles that make us a beacon of democracy, and ensure that liberty remains an unbroken chain passed down to the future. Let us embrace the dramatic narrative that is our history and present, recognizing that the Constitution is not a relic, but a living, breathing covenant that binds us together. The preamble sets in motion a principle for us as American people. Our duties and obligations are not burdens, but opportunities to shape the destiny of a nation that stands as a testament to the enduring power of liberty. May we be the torchbearers of justice, architects of unity, and guardians of freedom. As we stand at the crossroads of history, may our actions echo through the annals of time, reaffirming that unbroken chain that binds us as citizens to the Constitution and to each other. Thank you, and may our journey as a nation continue with purpose, resilience, and compassion for all.
The time for contestant number 3 is 9 minutes and 25 seconds. It meets the parameters. There are no penalty points. For the past 5 minutes, contestant number 1 has been in a private room preparing for the assigned topic presentation. The contestants will be shown a time card at 3, 4, and 5 minutes of their assigned topic discourse. If there is a violation of a time requirement, a penalty of 1 point for each minute or fraction thereof shall be assessed against the contestant's total score. The topic the contestants will be addressing during this portion is Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. If everyone is ready, contestant number 1.
Have you ever said something that you shouldn't have? Maybe you did something that you shouldn't have. What was your first thought? Your first thought was probably, let me not say anything that incriminates myself. Maybe when you were questioned about it, you even threw up your hands and said, I plead the Fifth. This is the way that the Fifth Amendment is commonly included in casual conversations. And it's what the Fifth Amendment is most famous for, the right to not testify against yourself. It's included in scripts, in movies, and books, and even casual conversation. But the Fifth Amendment protects so much more than just your right not to testify against yourself. The Fifth Amendment protects your pathway to justice in the United States. Today I've drawn the topic of the Fifth Amendment, and we're going to talk about it through 3 separate points. 1, the creation of it. 2nd, the development of it. And finally, 3rd, the preservation of it. Let's start off with point 1, the creation of the Fifth Amendment. In order to understand the Fifth Amendment, its purpose, and why it exists, we must rewind back in time, past even early revolutionary America to old medieval England. In this time, the king or the monarchy could throw whoever he wanted in jail, specifically his political enemies. So in the year 1215, a group of English citizens gathered together to pressure King John, the monarch at the time, to sign a document called the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta explicitly stated that every citizen should be given a trial before going to jail. The Founding Fathers loved this concept in the Magna Carta as former English citizens and wanted to copy this idea into the Constitution of their new nation. And that is what inspired the writing of the Fifth Amendment. The Founding Fathers wanted to create a way to preserve justice for every citizen in the United States. But this leads me to my second point. Point 2, development. The Fifth Amendment fittingly protects 5 separate rights of every American citizen. The first right is right to grand jury. This means that the government gathers together a group of unbiased citizens to see whether they have enough evidence to bring you to trial. This prevents over-prosecution in the United States for citizens, meaning that if there's not enough evidence against you, you don't have to go to trial in the United States. The second right that the Fifth Amendment protects is right to double jeopardy. This means that if today, after this competition, I went out and stole a cake from a bakery, went to trial for it, and was acquitted, they could not try me for that crime over and over and over. Again, this prevents over-prosecution in the United States for American citizens. The third right that the Fifth Amendment protects is right to not testify against yourself. This is the most popular thing that the Fifth Amendment is known for. The Founding Fathers included this clause because they wanted the burden of prosecution in the United States court system to be on, well, the prosecution, and not on the defendant himself to incriminate himself and make himself look guilty in trial. The fourth right that the Fifth Amendment protects is right to due process. This means that every citizen in the United States has the right to a fair trial. The fifth right that the Fifth Amendment protects is right to eminent domain, meaning that if the government needs to take your property, they must justly compensate you for that. For example, if I live near the highway and the government needs to take my house over to expand the highway, they must pay me for that. That limits the government and protects your property rights in the United States. This leads me to my third and final point. Point 3, why does it matter, and preservation. Why does it matter that the 25th Amendment, that the Fifth Amendment exists? After all, most of you probably didn't even know each of these separate rights that the Fifth Amendment protects. Well, the Fifth Amendment protects your pathway to justice in the United States. James Madison, author of the Fifth Amendment and the Bill of Rights, once said that justice is the end goal of every government. And the Founding Fathers in the beginning of this nation had a vision that every American citizen, no matter who you are, what ethnic background you were, where you came from, what language you spoke, how much money you had, and what you did, every citizen would have a right to justice in this fair new government. The Fifth Amendment helps protect that vision that the Founding Fathers had when they wrote it into the Constitution. Thank you.
The time for contestant number 1 is 4 minutes, 18 seconds. That falls within the parameters. There is no time penalty. If everyone is ready, contestant number 2.
So I'm watching a crime show. The cops are interrogating this suspect who is not holding up well at all. They're breaking at every single question, giving up every important piece of information, and just when the police ask the most pivotal question, the suspect's lawyer walks in. And he goes, "Stop, stop, stop. My client pleads the fifth." Of course, at this point, the audience knows we're not going to be getting anything else out of this suspect. The phrase, "I plead the fifth," refers to the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, where it's established that nobody can be compelled to witness against themselves. It's a phrase that's found its way into everyday conversation as a way to say, I'm not going to give you the information you're asking for. The Fifth Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution that were pushed largely by the anti-federalists, people who were worried that the new government could become something as tyrannical as the UK had been while America was still a colony. And it protects much, much more than just the right to remain silent. The Fifth Amendment establishes the need for a formal accusation of a crime. It protects against double jeopardy. It establishes the right to due process and the right to financial compensation when the government confiscates land. This amendment starts off with the kind of protection very common in the Bill of Rights, protections against the government having too much power. It starts off by establishing that nobody can be held accountable for a criminal offense without indictment by a grand jury. What this does is it makes it very difficult for the government to just lock people up without a formal process of accusation. After this comes the double jeopardy clause, which is extremely important because it means that once someone is freed and declared not guilty, they really are free, and they don't have to worry about going through the same process over and over again because the Fifth Amendment prohibits people from being tried for the same crime twice. It's only after this that we actually get to the part of this amendment where it says that nobody may, in any criminal case, be compelled to witness against himself. This is immediately followed by one of the most recognizable phrases in the Constitution, that nobody may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. But while this idea of due process is strongly associated with the Constitution, it's an idea that isn't actually unique to this document. It largely came from the Magna Carta, a document that inspired a lot of parts of our Constitution, and this is just one example of that inspiration. The last thing that this amendment establishes is that the government can't take away land for public use without financially compensating the people they took it from. I'll admit that for a while, I wasn't sure how this clause about eminent domain really related to my everyday life. But there is a way that this has impacted someone close to me. My grandfather was raised in the town of Buncombe, Tennessee. It's a small town, not much more than a wide spot in the road, and if you look it up today, you'll struggle to find anything about it. That's because, since 1952, the area of Buncombe has been known as Woods Reservoir after it was flooded to help to create Arnold Air Force Base. Even though this was a small community, this flooding had a huge impact. Tons of people had to move away from their homes, get new jobs. Graves in this town were exhumed so that they could be moved somewhere else. In fact, from 1975 to 2019, the residents of Buncombe had annual reunions. While this is sad, and it's tragic that this had to happen to create the base, every single person in this town was financially compensated because of the Fifth Amendment. People are never going to be perfect, so we're never going to have a legal system that's perfectly fair. But the Fifth Amendment helps to ensure liberty and justice for all.
The time for contestant number 2 is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Meets the parameters. There are no time penalties. If everyone is ready, contestant number 3.
Quote, "The Fifth Amendment has been an old friend, a good friend. It is one of the great landmarks in men's struggle to be free of tyranny, to be decent and civilized." This is a quote from Supreme Court Justice William Douglas. And what I'd like to point out about that quote is the word old friend. Because America did not create the Fifth Amendment. They did not create the right to a fair trial. But now, on the scale of the world, we have the opportunity to uphold that for every other nation. Because the Constitution is a rule book. And just like any rule book, it needs to change to adapt to its circumstances. The first year of this national contest was 1938. It was held in Oklahoma with 4,000 students, not 52, 4,000. And I couldn't find an original copy of the 1938 handbook, but I can make an estimated guess that it's changed quite a bit. Circumstances have developed that have required changes to the rule book to still be applicable to the current competition. And that's the same with the Constitution. The handbook for this competition has been passed down to generation, just as the Constitution has for almost the last 250 years. So while the Fifth Amendment wasn't created by the U.S., pretty soon it's going to be our generation's responsibility to uphold it, to make changes to the way that we interpret it so that it's still applicable to the present. The Fifth Amendment provides 5 provisions. It defends against self-incrimination. It gives the right to grand jury. It defends against eminent domain, the government taking land without paying it back. And it gives the right to a fair trial. And so a lot of these ideas don't originate from America. They originate from even back to when Jesus was born. In the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th book of Moses, it was said that you would need 2 to 3 rabbis to be there in cases of grand trial. Then we move on to the Magna Carta, in which it is said that no man should have his property taken from him without fair trial. A lot of these rights originate from the Latin phrase nemo tenentur accusare, which roughly translates in my terrible Latin to no man should be bound to accuse himself. These are not new concepts, but now America has the responsibility to uphold them and make a statement about where America stands on the right of the people. Because the Fifth Amendment was one of the first developments in human thought of the decency of civic law. Because even thousands of years ago, we understood that this was essential not only for the decency of human beings, but for all other civil rights. Think about in our landmark supreme cases, what rights would we have if we didn't have the right to a fair trial? We would not have Miranda rights. Even the 14th Amendment specifically copies the wording of the Fifth Amendment in its due process clause. Brown v. Board of Education wouldn't have been able to happen without the right to a fair trial. But just as the rule book for this competition has been passed down to future generations, it will be our generation's duty to continue to progress the interpretation of the Fifth Amendment to ensure that all human beings are put with equal respect and dignity. For example, our interpretation of eminent domain still has to progress. In 2005's Kelo versus the City of New London, it was first denoted that eminent domain cases could be justified just by monetary compensation. In Ohio, they are debating whether or not eminent domain applies to Indian burial grounds. These are things that our generation is going to have to decide and progress our interpretation of the Fifth Amendment to maintain its applicability to the future. And so what's important is that we're able to come here and talk about what needs to change in the future for people to still be protected. Because there's too much hate in the world, too much anger in the world, and not enough love for our neighbors. So the fact that we were able to come here and orate, not just speak, orate on the importance of our rights and the importance of our ability to speak on behalf of ourselves is what makes this nation great and is what is going to make this nation great for the next many centuries. Thank you.
The time for contestant number 3 is 4 minutes and 58 seconds. It meets the parameters. There are no penalty points. This concludes the competition portion of this program. Will the judges and tabulators please go directly to the tabulation room for the determination of contest results. At this time, we will take a short recess. I would ask everyone to be back in their seats in approximately 20 minutes. Thank you.
Meeting people, discussing things with peers, that is almost like somebody was twisting my mind and expanding it and giving me a broader vision. The thing that I probably remember the most, the very first morning, we were all sitting around this great big table. All of us were white. This was in the Civil Rights Day. And a young black man walked up, introduced himself to the sponsor. I could tell that the sponsor didn't know what to do with him. Because here I am from Texas, here's somebody else. I don't even know all the states they were from, but we were from all over. And I could see he didn't know what to do. And so I said to the fella, hey, have a seat, sit down and eat with us. He was the only black person in the 88 young men who were there. Unless you live through those days, you don't know the emotion that goes with that, almost the nervousness at that time. This is 52. We just took him in. We just took him in. At the end of the week, and we were headed back, he and I were sitting next to each other, and we were having lots of fun, you know, as guys do, and having a good time singing. And all of a sudden, it dawned on me, I am sitting next to a black person, and I didn't even realize it. I think that's one of the major things that I got out of Boys Nation, was an appreciation for the problems that were going on in America, but also how silly they were. Now that may not seem like a big deal, but it was a huge deal to me, and it changed my life. Changed my life.
Gentlemen, welcome to Boys Nation. We're excited to have you here.
Well, welcome.
Thank
I'm
you.
Tom.
Nice to meet you.
And you're
Well, I've just gotten here and I'm really excited for the week. I've met a lot of interesting people from all over the country. It's nice because we haven't been super awkward or anything. I feel like we kind of hit it off already.
When I first got here, I was like, it's a whole nother crowd. It's a whole different new environment, and I'm just happy to be here. We already had created a Snapchat account to talk to each other, and it was exciting to finally get to meet them.
It's better than I expected already. Meeting all the different guys, I'm really fascinated by the different range of individuals and the skills and talents that just meeting them and talking with them, I can already see. It's been a fantastic experience so far.
I haven't had any huge impressions yet. It's been great to meet my fellow delegates. All of them seem like wonderful people. I'm just very excited to be here. A lot of people talking about their respective Boys State experiences, comparing and contrasting, discussing why they think they were nominated and how their nomination processes were different. Besides that, a lot of people complaining about the food at their Boys State, hoping that it would be a little bit better here. A lot of jokes, just generally a good time.
Oh man, it's been really streamlined, really organized. I'm really happy to be here. So much respect for the Legionnaires who have organized everything. I'm super excited. It was really great getting to meet everybody, getting to socialize, having those first interactions. It was really a positive experience. And it was very, very quickly easy to see the intelligence and creativity in every person here.
I expect there to be a deeper dive into parliamentary procedure and just how the Senate works as a whole, like deeper than Boys State went.
I expect to learn a little bit better of how to communicate in a more professional setting, especially in a legislative branch, but also the way that the civics and government work in the U.S., particularly to pass laws for the betterment of our community.
I plan on bringing something back to the state of Mississippi that I can use in my voter registration initiative at my school.
More about how our federal government and specifically the Senate functions and the passage of bills, and specifically more how committees function, as I don't really understand that right now.
One thing I'm particularly excited for is to meet my sitting senators and get a chance to talk to them. So I'm expecting that'll happen, and I guess I'm expecting it'll go pretty well.
Well, I'm hoping to build leadership skills and kind of get to communicate with the people around me and build long-lasting relationships and hopefully get some networking with some amazing people, see some amazing things.
The boys are split into two equal groups of parties, the Nationalists and the Federalists, and each of them conduct their own primary all the way up to having one nominee. So they get together, there's usually about 20 to 30 people who run for president or vice president, and they whittle it down vote by vote until each party comes up with one nominee for each. And then they come together in the full Senate and they get to give their speeches, they get to have people nominate them through speeches, they talk about their party platform, and then we have a vote. And when we come out of the other side, we have a president and a vice president of Boys Nation.
I feel very happy. This is one of the most special moments of my life. I felt like I could push a message that would really resonate with people. A message of unity and a message that had real life impact. Where that if we were able to achieve unity as a bunch of teenage boys, that could send a message to the people at Capitol Hill that they should too. I believe in reclaiming national identity. I think that when we have stronger families, when we have more economic prosperity, when we have more workers, when we have more people caring about others, that our country runs smoother. American Legion Post 9. I would just like to say thank you for believing me, putting me at Boys State in Kentucky, and thank you for putting me here at Boys Nation. I hope I made you proud.
Today, first of all, I'd love to meet my senators. It's such a cool opportunity that it's probably going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'm looking forward to talking with them, talking about their lives in Washington, D.C., how their work is, and all the cool stuff like that.
We just got the chance to meet with Senator Capito, who's a representative of our state, Boys Nation and Girls Nation. We both got to meet with her for about 20 minutes and just like discuss our lives and her life and just like what it's like for her and her role. And it was a very like personal conversation. I think there's a stereotype that some politicians are like, maybe they're not personal, but she was like very down to earth. She was genuine, and it just felt like a conversation that you could have had with anyone, not someone that's as important as Senator Capito is. I think the biggest thing I've taken personally is there's lots of misconceptions about politics. I think if you ask the average voter, they just kind of disregard politicians as selfish and greedy, and unfortunately there are some people like that, but there's a lot more nuance to it, and I think most people do believe what they're doing is for the good of the nation, and that's their goal, and that's what they're elected to do. And so I've begun to respect most people in politics a lot more.
Oh, meeting with my senator, I mean, it was great. I mean, obviously you see her on TV, you see her online, but you've never get to really interact with the real person, and it really shows you that they're more than just a policy or a vote or something like that. They're a real person that really has to think. They have lots of work to do. And it really makes you respect the position more, because a lot of times what we hear about is maybe the end result. We hear the vote, we hear like a sound bite, a speech, but we don't get to shake their hand, sit down and have a short conversation with the person who's doing those things for us, which really, I think, makes a huge difference, because politics is people at the end of the day. It's people making decisions about what they think is best for the country. And it's good to actually get to see the people side of it, because it gives you a much larger perspective than just the small bit you get from being on the outside. Talk to the senator about nothing in like super specific, but more broad details, just her thoughts on representing the state of West Virginia as a whole, and also her thoughts on like being on America as a whole, and the ideals of democracy that we've been learning about. I wouldn't get into the super nitty-gritties of policy, because that's more, I think, something that you could do with anybody. But I'd want to hear the perspective of a senator on the issues of patriotism, of what it's like being here, how she got here, stories, things like that. Those are some of the conversations that I wanted to have.
It was a lot of fun. It was really interesting. Mike Lee's very well versed and very knowledgeable about a lot of the topics that I'm interested in. So it was a fun experience to hear his perceptions on what's going on in our country right now. My questions were mostly about finance, specifically the Federal Reserve implementing a cryptocurrency in our country. Well, if you know anything about Mike Lee, he's a pretty easy guy to talk to. He's not a hard person to get along with at all, and he's, you know, from what I've seen, I've kind of had the opportunity to meet him a little bit once, and then I really got to meet him today. He's pretty entertaining, and he's very insightful. I mean, he's an easy person to talk to. I mean, I'm all the way across the country from where I live. It's also a really awesome experience, and I've got the opportunity to meet a lot of wonderful people. I've made friends from nearly every state in the country, and I've got to meet a lot of cool people, so learn a lot of new things. It's awesome.
Today, first of all, I'd love to meet my senators. It's such a cool opportunity that it's probably going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I'm looking forward to talking with them, talking about their lives in Washington, D.C., how their work is, and all the cool stuff like that.
We just got the chance to meet with Senator Capito, who's a representative of our state, Boys Nation and Girls Nation. We both got to meet with her for about 20 minutes and just like discuss our lives and her life and just like what it's like for her and her role. And it was a very like personal conversation. I think there's a stereotype that some politicians are like, maybe they're not personal, but she was like very down to earth. She was genuine, and it just felt like a conversation that you could have had with anyone, not someone that's as important as Senator Capito is. I think the biggest thing I've taken personally is there's lots of misconceptions about politics. I think if you ask the average voter, they just kind of disregard politicians as selfish and greedy, and unfortunately there are some people like that, but there's a lot more nuance to it, and I think most people do believe what they're doing is for the good of the nation, and that's their goal, and that's what they're elected to do. And so I've begun to respect most people in politics a lot more.
Oh, meeting with my senator, I mean, it was great. I mean, obviously you see her on TV, you see her online, but you never get to really interact with the real person, and it really shows you that they're more than just a policy or a vote or something like that. They're a real person that really has to think. They have lots of work to do. And it really makes you respect the position more, because a lot of times what we hear about is maybe the end result. We hear the vote, we hear like a sound bite, a speech. We don't get to shake their hand, sit down and have a short conversation with the person who's doing those things for us, which really, I think, makes a huge difference, because politics is people at the end of the day. It's people making decisions about what they think is best for the country. And it's good to actually get to see the people side of it, because it gives you a much larger perspective than just the small bit you get from being on the outside. Talk to the senator about nothing in like super specific, but more broad details, just her thoughts on representing the state of West Virginia as a whole, and also her thoughts on like being on America as a whole, and the ideals of democracy that we've been learning about. I wouldn't get into the super nitty-gritties of policy, because that's more, I think, something that you could do with anybody. But I'd want to hear the perspective of a senator on the issues of patriotism, of what it's like being here, how she got here, stories, things like that. Those are some of the conversations that I wanted to have.
It was a lot of fun. It was really interesting. Mike Lee's very well versed and very knowledgeable about a lot of the topics that I'm interested in. So it was a fun experience to hear his perceptions on what's going on in our country right now. My questions were mostly about finance, specifically the Federal Reserve implementing a cryptocurrency in our country. Well, if you know anything about Mike Lee, he's a pretty easy guy to talk to. He's not a hard person to get along with at all, and he's, you know, from what I've seen, I've kind of had the opportunity to meet him a little bit once, and then I really got to meet him today. He's pretty entertaining, and he's very insightful. I mean, he's an easy person to talk to. I mean, I'm all the way across the country from where I live. It's also a really awesome experience, and I've got the opportunity to meet a lot of wonderful people. I've made friends from nearly every state in the country, and I've got to meet a lot of cool people, so learn a lot of new things. It's awesome.
So Lincoln Memorial, like the first time I went there was when I was a wee baby, but like when I'm like here now, like I still kind of like get breathtaking, because it's like the biggest thing, like the biggest monument that I've been to, like that really takes your breath away. It's just a huge monument, huge figure in American history, and it's just like an honor being there. It just a sense of greatness all around. Walking around the National Mall when I was a kid was the reason why I wanted to go into armed services and set my goals there, serve the country of the United States. Well, I just saw the grandeur of all things, and like this is like the impression that you get from here is like this is everything that we stand for as a country. You see Lincoln right there standing for equality. Washington Monument, which I believe is just to you know, show the grandeur of the United States. And walking around here, it got me into like everything that it stands for, and I wanted to serve that in some capacity.
We're at the Vietnam War Memorial, which memorializes the Vietnam War and lists the names of all those who were killed in duty during the conflict. Yeah, so he was my grandma's cousin's son, my dad's second cousin. And he shared my grandma's maiden name. His name was Robert J. Schley. And he was killed fighting in 1967 at the age of 23. And he received the Navy Cross, which is one of the highest honors that a United States Marine can receive. I think it's moving. I mean, I know he wasn't very closely related to me, but to see someone who, you know, knew people that I was related to, I mean, my grandma knew him, I think it's kind of hard to process, but it also kind of just puts a name and face to the war, because to have someone who I'm related to on that wall just shows how the Vietnam War is very personal to a lot of different people, and it's almost like everyone lost someone. But also he was very heroic, and I think his legacy lives on in a lot of ways.
Our doctor on staff, his name is Happy Saddle. He said that this is the second time that he's been at Boys Nation or in DC, and he was looking for his friend, and called him a scumbag. He said I can't say the other word, but he called him a scumbag, and you could tell that that was a near and dear friend. So I don't really have necessarily anybody that would be anywhere here, but just to see other people's connections to it and be able to look through their lenses, it's a completely different experience.
I mean, I think it's a huge honor. I mean, just to be here amongst so many people from across the country, just to appreciate the country that we were born in. I mean, so many opportunities have opened up because of America, and I think it's given me a greater appreciation for where I live, and really made a commitment to me, especially seeing the veterans here and the sacrifices they made. It's really made a calling to me to want to do everything I can to make my country a better place in the future.
Boys Nation, it's a privilege and an honor to be here. Coming from Boys State, I really wanted to see if I can make it here, and to be honest with you, when I first stepped in through those doors, I didn't know what it was. But now, like, with it, everyone, like, talking with everyone and experiencing with everyone else, I realized that you guys, like, we are the top of our states, and we're all gathered here to share our ideas and simulate politics and learn more about our nation and our civics and kind of simulate that with each other. And I think it's just the biggest learning experience I've had over the summer. It's great.
Make some noise if you're a Rangers fan. I want to welcome you all on behalf of the Rangers and Major League Baseball to the Texas Rangers MLB Youth Academy. Really excited to be here right now for our World Series play ball event. Our goal here today is, first of all, to have fun. Who wants to have some fun today?
I am Noah Ferraro. We are at the Texas Rangers Youth Academy, and enjoy it out here. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't really have these events. I think it's really beneficial to them, you know, get all these, not even just major leaguers, but players that have played through high school, college, whether it be American Legion to just high school. You can learn so much, you can be taught so much, and be taught how to love the game. And I think that's very important for them just to be active in general, but baseball is a beautiful sport, and I wish I had it when I was their age, and I think it's really beneficial to them.
You know, I've been walking around watching the boys, and they're interacting with the younger kids, and you know, it's something for them to give back to the community and letting them work with kids younger than them and having that knowledge of passing stuff on. So, you know, it's great. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying everything I'm seeing in there.
I've worked camps before, and I think that's a good starting point for me. I think I want to stay in this game for a while. Even if it's not playing, I would like to help out here, let's say, or work a job in MLB where I'm helping kids out, helping big leaguers out.
You know, this event that we're participating in today, and it gives us a chance because really these guys haven't been together since we did the World Series because some of them had to go off to college. You know, this is just one of the many things to come for us as far as celebrating what we did and what we accomplished as a team. So it's been real good the last day and a half that these boys have been able to get back together, rehash a little bit of what went on, and really enjoy each other's company.
I'm going to have a long-lasting relationship with all these guys, and I still text some of them, hey, how you doing, what's going on, and I'm gonna go back home soon for the break for college or whatever, and I can't wait to hang out with them. And you guys want to go hit maybe or something? And that's gonna be fun. Enjoy those guys and love them.
Well, it's got to be one of the most beautiful places in the country. It's incredibly sobering and serene, and just to think of all the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for this great nation, who lay at rest here. It's extremely moving just to be here. The Honor Guard does like wreath laying ceremonies, and they have organizations that come out. So the American Legion presented a wreath, which was laying at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier to pay respects to all of the soldiers who were missing in action and who have never returned home.
Yeah, so we got there and there was 3 people there running the ceremony, and then they said a couple of words, and then for a while it was just one guy walking back and forth in front of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which was really impressive. He did it for a while. And then they came back and there was 3 people there again. They walked the wreath down with 2 of our Boys Nation senators, and they laid it. And it was, for me, really impressive to see how they're able to do it just like perfectly. Even their steps are all in unison, and it's amazing to see. I'm sure a lot of practice went into that, and it's really cool to see.
It was very impressive to see the amount of practice that goes into that and the amount of respect and honor that we have for the unknown soldiers.
So I've been to Arlington National Cemetery. This is now my 3rd time. I've been to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier 3 times. I've seen John F. Kennedy's gravesite, Thurgood Marshall, and Omar Bradley, some of the very famous people who are buried here. But this time around I was looking to do something a little more personal, so I was able to tag along with some of the staff and go and visit some of their personal connections who are laid to rest here. The American Legion is inherently a military organization, right, of veterans, so we saw Specialist Mace from Virginia, I believe, who passed away in Operation Enduring Freedom. And so it's just very, I think it's awesome to be able to go with veterans and pay respects to their friends and people they've known and lost.
It definitely hits close to home, because that was just a young man in their 20s, which I am very close to that age, and he led the life of ultimate sacrifice, and that's something that's very sobering and inspiring to see. That could be any one of us senators here. It's right around that age.
It's very emotional. I have family who served different conflicts in American history. It's really just sad to think of all the families who, have no idea of what exactly happened to their loved ones.
Yeah, it really was a crazy experience. I've never been here ever, even though I live pretty close, so it was awesome to see, especially with the Legionnaires, and see how they knew these people.
It's very sobering, seeing the miles and miles of graves of those who served. It's not, it's a solemn experience, and it's definitely makes me want to fulfill what they fought for and serve in the military.
So we're at Tampa Post 5 in Tampa, Florida, and tonight is a town hall meeting for our visit to James A. Healy Veterans Hospital, the VA hospital here in Tampa, Florida. So the first time we've done this, and what we did is we began by having virtual visit with different areas of the hospital and the hospital staff. So we've talked with, for instance, folks from polytrauma, minority veterans, and several other different particular areas within the hospital. So now we're following up with a visit, in-person visit here in Florida. And the idea is that we've gained a lot more information. We can be a little bit more focused on the different and unique aspects of this particular VA facility. So this is a facility that has a polytrauma unit, which is not something that's common in VA hospitals. So it's unique in that sense. It gives us the opportunity to spend more time on the ground with the polytrauma team there and learn what it is they do. And what it does is it gives us information going in. The outcome will still be the same in the sense that we will have an opportunity to talk to them and learn from them what it is that they're doing. They'll have an opportunity to hear from veterans what the veterans think of the care that they're receiving from the facility. If anything, by doing it earlier, we do gain more information about the facility, but the outcome of making sure that they're providing the services that veterans expect and that part of the mission remains the same.
There are several reasons why it's really important for us to be here. The state of Florida has the third largest veteran population in the country, with just under 1,600,000 veterans. And with the Veterans Affairs hospitals, it's important that the VA, especially here in Florida, understands that we partner with them, we encourage and do everything that we possibly can to support all their efforts in taking care of our veteran population. So when we meet with the clinicians and administrators, we try to impress that on them, that we're the good guys, okay, and we are on their side. And one of the questions that always comes up, one of the things that always comes up is, what can we do to help you do what you do better?
The System Worth Saving itself is a unique program. It's unlike anything else that we have in the Legion, where we have this cooperative effort with the VA itself. And VA&R, Veterans Affairs and Rehabilitation Commission, I mean, that's kind of what our whole mission is to make sure that we're liaisoning and we have cooperation with the veterans. So by getting on the ground at the different VAs, we have an opportunity to see what they're doing. They have an opportunity to hear what we think, and we have an opportunity to learn from them and then take what we learn back to Congress when we have a visit later on this year.
Somos de aquí, originarios de Aldea de la Libertad, pertenecemos a Santa Lucía, Milpas Altas. La verdad es que le doy gracias a Legión Americana por las donaciones de ropita que han traído para este lugar. Realmente es la primera vez que nos están tomando en cuenta para hacer esta actividad. Yo le doy gracias a cada uno de ustedes. También sé que atrás de este proyecto hay muchas personas. Solo les puedo decir gracias por el apoyo, gracias por su colaboración y que Dios bendiga a cada uno por nombre.
Como todos los años, integrantes de la Legión Americana llevaron alegría, ropa y raciones de alimentos a las comunidades más necesitadas de Zacatepeques. Fieles al compromiso de apoyar a la niñez, festejaron a 72 niños de la Aldea La Libertad, La Pinada y San José con el objetivo de celebrar el Día del Niño. El Día del Niño es significativo para la organización. Por ello, como en reiteradas oportunidades, festejaron en las 3 comunidades a los niños que viven en medio de la pobreza y en la lejanía de la ciudad.
Esta oportunidad estamos celebrando el Día del Niño. Este es el segundo lugar que lo estamos celebrando el día de hoy. Anteriormente estuvimos en la Aldea La Libertad, ahora estamos en La Pinada. Quisiera agradecer a todos los miembros de la Legión Americana y a todos los que no son miembros de la Legión Americana, pero que con su ayuda económica ayudan a que nosotros podamos comprar ropa para los niños de escasos recursos y poder hacerles una celebración del Día del Niño. Muchas gracias a todos.
Esa es otra actividad de la Legión Americana aquí en Guatemala. Nosotros queremos ayuda de niños con comidas, con ropa, para Navidad, para escuela. Es nosotros actividad para la comunidad. Es muy emocional ayudar a estos niños pobres. ¿Sí? Es como yo dije antes, ¿qué es el futuro de ellos? Campesinos. Nosotros queremos ayudar a niños para educación, becas, ropa, comidas.
La Legión Americana se ha caracterizado por el apoyo humanitario a través de las donaciones de sus integrantes y así llevar felicidad a los niños en las condiciones más desfavorecidas. Esta labor altruista se realiza desde hace más de una década con el apoyo de la Unidad de Prevención del Delito, quienes se encargan de ubicar a los beneficiados.
Sabemos que en todas las aldeas hay diferentes necesidades. Esta aldea pues se ha elegido porque es una aldea que también hay mucha necesidad. También hemos colaborado acá con la entrega de víveres, anteriormente se ha hecho eso. Hoy pues venimos beneficiando a los niños con la entrega de ropa.
Hay muchos niños de escasos recursos, hay muchos niños que están sin padre, hay niños que están sin madre, unos porque los han abandonado, pero realmente elegimos a niños que realmente tengan necesidad para que sean beneficiados en este proyecto.
Sí, agradecemos por el apoyo que nos han brindado y por siempre acordarse de los niños, ¿verdad? Y sabemos de que de poquito en poquito pues las ayudas siempre llegan para bien.
Sus integrantes esperan continuar estas actividades y concientizar a las personas para que se respeten los derechos de los niños y trabajar en el bienestar de quienes más lo necesitan.
Les agradezco a la Legión Americana por venir a apoyarnos a esta aldea. Les agradecemos mucho la entrega de ropa y hacer unas actividades para los niños. Les agradezco también a los policías de la PNC por estar siempre aquí apoyándose en la aldea.
Yes, sir.
They're not in order the way you want them yet. They haven't told me yet what the order that I'm going.
Oh, the judges?
Yeah.
They're good. They're good. Well, good morning again. Before we make the formal introductions of our contestants and the judges, I would first like to recognize a few of our distinguished guests. Our National Commander, Daniel C. Hafford, is here with us on the podium. Daniel, thank you. Our newest National Adjutant is with us this morning, Mr. Rodney Rowland. Thank you for being here, Rodney. One of our National Vice Commanders, Randy Edwards, is in the audience this morning. Randy. And our past National Commander that's with us this morning, David Raybine, and his lovely wife, Ann. I would also like to welcome the American Legion Auxiliary Americanism Chair, Miss Sally Rossman. And I would also like to acknowledge the gentleman who is serving as the chairman of the American Legion Americanism Commission, which has the policy-making responsibility of the American Legion National High School Oratorical Scholarship Program, Mr. Mark Avis. Mark, thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your leadership. I would also like to publicly thank all the individuals who have assisted with the final contest today and the quarter and the semifinal contest, without whom this national contest would not be possible. Would all the judges, timekeepers, tabulators, room monitors, ushers, escorts, and everyone else that's helped, please stand and be recognized. And at this time, I would like to recognize our outstanding panel of judges. As your name is called, please come forward so that the National Commander and the Americanism Chairman may present you with a token of our appreciation. Dr. Adam Carrington, Associate Professor of Policies in the Van Andel Graduate School of Statesmanship in Hillsdale College. At Hillsdale, Dr. Carrington teaches courses on the United States Constitution, constitutional law, the American presidency, and policy and literature. He publishes primarily on matters of American political institutions, especially the judiciary. His scholarly publications have included in American Political Thought, Presidential Studies Quarterly, and the American Journal of Legal History. His book on the jurisprudence of Supreme Court Justice Stephen Field was published in 2017 by Lexington Books. In 2018, Dr. Carrington was selected by Hillsdale College senior class as the Professor of the Year. He was a Garwood Visiting Fellow at James Madison Program at Princeton University. He holds a PhD in Political Science from Baylor University, a BA in Politics and Religions from Ashland University, where he was an Ashbrook Scholar. Dr. Carrington, thank you, sir. David Gay is the Vice President, Business Development for Centene WellCare. David received his Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training from East Stroudsburg University and his Master of Science in Exercise Physiology from West Virginia University. David has been in healthcare industry his entire career and has held multiple positions in corporate health, account management, provider marketing, and Medicare sales. He was integral to the success of the Physician United Plan and Meridian Care Health Plans through his development of high-performing sales call centers and field brokerage agencies. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Matthew Meehan is the Associate Dean and Associate Professor of Government, Graduate School of Government at Hillsdale College. He has been teaching and designing humanities curricula for 20 years. Dr. Meehan is a graduate of the University of Dallas and the valedictorian of his class. He received a BA in Politics, an MA in English, and a PhD in Literature with honors for his dissertation on Shakespeare, Thomas More, and the education of leading citizens. For the past 5 years, He has taught for the College Washington's Hillsdale internship program for undergraduate. He has consulted national leaders and heads of states. He has written for both scholarly and popular, including Moriana, the Wall Street Journal, and he is also the author of The Handsome Little Cygnet, as well as Mr. Meehan's mildly amusing mythical mammals, an illustrated best-selling book on poems that one critic has called a new classic in children's literature. His lovely wife and their passel of children live in Virginia. Thank you. Hans Zeiger is the president of the Jack Miller Center, a nationwide network of scholars and teachers who are committed to advancing the core texts and ideals of American political tradition. In the preparation for the 250th anniversary of American independence in 2026, Hans is leading an ambitious campaign to expand the pipeline of scholars who are dedicated to teaching America's founding principles and history, to seed and cultivate university campus centers for the study of American political tradition, and to expand the teaching of core civic knowledge in America's kindergarten through 12 schools. Hans' writings on public policy, history, and civil society have appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer, the San Francisco Chronicle, the National Review Online, Seattle Times, among others. He holds a bachelor's degree from Hillsdale College, a master's in public policy from Pepperdine University, and studied American politics at Claremont Graduate University. He also previously served as a public affairs officer of the Air National Guard. Thanks, sir. Rachel Davison Humphreys is the Senior Director of Civic Learning Initiatives at the Bill of Rights Institute. She leads the team that leads outreach initiatives, develops new programs and products, fosters close relationships with BRI's network of 50,000 teachers, and designs the marketing campaigns. Before joining BRI in 2016, she worked almost a decade as an educator, mentor, and trainer in middle, high school, and university environments, and continues to consult on various educational projects. Rachel earned her BA in Liberal Arts from the Great Books program at St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, her teaching certificate in adolescent education from the Association Montessori International, and her MA in Learning, Design, and Technology at Georgetown University. Thank you, Rachel. Robert Warren is the Military Affinity Lead Account Manager at USAA. He has more than 30 years of experience in organizational leadership, collaboration, and a strong relationship in building clients with and eternal partners. Robert is a Direct Marketing Association certified marketing professional and has worked successfully in multi-level organizations and with diverse cultural groups both in the U.S. and abroad. He served over 13 years in the United States Army's Military Intelligence Corps. He is a combat veteran of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm and has been recognized numerous times for his service and honor. He's a graduate from the United States Army's Defense Language Institute, and he's attended Miami-Dade College and Central Texas College. Thank you, sir. And now, I'm going to introduce to you these three fine young students. Appearing as contestant one is Aubrey Jane Moore, and she, go ahead and stand up where everybody can clap. She is from Renton, Washington. She is a sophomore and is homeschooled and is sponsored by American Legion Post 186, Cathay, Washington. Thank you, Aubrey. You can take it. Appearing as contestant number 2 is Knox Boyd of Lafayette, Indiana. Go ahead, clap. He is a senior at McCutcheon High School and is sponsored by the West Lafayette, Indiana Post 492. Thank you, Knox. Appearing as contestant number 3 is David Daniel. He is from Owensboro, Kentucky. He is a senior at Owensboro High School and is sponsored by the American Legion Post 9 in Owensboro, Kentucky. And now, the moment I think most of you are kind of waiting for, the announcement of the outcome of the contest. The third place winner of a $20,000 scholarship is David Daniel of Kentucky. Ooh, great job. Okay, no, that's it.
Don't get off the stage yet.
The second place winner and the recipient of a $22,500 scholarship is Knox Boyd of Indiana. And the champion of the 85th American Legion National High School Oratorical Scholarship Program is Aubrey Jane Moore of Washington. Aubrey is the winner of a $25,000 scholarship and an all-expense-paid trip to the National Convention of the American Legion in New Orleans this summer as a member of the American Legion Youth Champions delegation. Please join me in another round. These kids are great. I'm going to tell you, they're just excellent. We will be honoring the 50 national contestants this afternoon at 1 o'clock at the awards luncheon to be held in the SEAL Center. We ask everyone to please honor the seating assignments in the banquet room. Contestants will be seated toward the front of the room as guests of honor and so they can receive their recognition. All other ticket holders are welcome to be seated at any table with a table tent reading general seating, and you must have a ticket to attend. I would ask that at the conclusion of this contest that all 50 contestants will remain here. Actually, they'll come up on stage and remain here to take pictures. And I've also been asked to, Hillsdale College has done an outstanding job providing this facilities for this first time. And we would ask you to please police up around your area because we want to make sure they understand that we are honest, courteous, and respectful of their facilities. So please pick up all your stuff and leave this college the way we found it. Please rise for the benediction. Chaplain Karen Street of the Department of New Mexico will lead us in our closing prayer.
Hello, everyone, and God bless you. What an auspicious occasion that we attended. Let us now go to God in prayer. Dear Lord, as we come to this point, may we recognize the excellence that you bestowed upon all of the students that came forward as contestants to represent the Constitution of the United States of America. Dear God, we just ask that you continue to bless everyone that has attended, been a part, and succeeded in bringing excellence to Hillsdale College. Their knowledge and their skills were brought forth, and no one is left behind as we go forward. Your peace has been upon them. May their peace be extended to all over the world as we go forward. We know that each person aligned themselves with specific topics. We know that each person aligned themselves with the gifts that you bestowed upon them. We thank you for those gifts. As we prepare to go forward in the final stages, let us not be amiss in knowing that you were present throughout this whole experience at Hillsdale College. We thank you for your guidance. We thank you for your strength. We thank you for this opportunity to showcase your excellence. May your peace continue to be upon us. May your glory always run through us. May you be continued to be blessed by our glorifying you in every day and every way. Thank you for all things. Amen.
Would you please join me in the salute to the colors of our nation? Right hand salute. 2. This concludes the 85th American Legion National High School Oratorical Scholarship Program, a constitutional speech contest, national finals. Thank you for attending. Everyone have a safe trip home. I'm glad that happened. I'm glad that happened.
Can't take a minute. Look at that. Please.